Bandwidth for Changelog is provided by Fastly. Learn more at fastly.com. We move fast and fix things here at Changelog because of Rollbar. Check them out at rollbar.com. And we're hosted on Linode servers. Head to linode.com/changelog.
This episode of The Changelog is brought to you by Hired. One thing people hate doing is searching for a new job. It's so painful to search through open positions on every job board under the sun. The process to find a new job is such a mess. If only there was an easier way. Well, I'm here to tell you that there is. Our friends at Hired have made it so companies send you offers with salary, benefits, and even equity up front. All you have to do is answer a few questions to showcase who you are and what type of job you're looking for. They work with more than 6,000 companies, from startups to large publicly traded companies in 14 major tech hubs in North America and Europe. You get to see all of your interview requests. You can accept, reject, or make changes to their offer even before you talk with anyone. And here's the kicker, it's totally free. This isn't going to cost you a thing. It's not like you have to go there and spend money to get this opportunity. And if you get a job through Hired, they're even going to give you a bonus. It's normally $300, but since you're a listener of the Changelog, they're going to give you $600 instead. Even if you're not looking for a job, you can refer a friend and Hired will send you a check for $1,337 when they accept the job. As you can see, Hired makes it way too easy. Get started at hired.com/changelog.
From Changelog Media, you're listening to The Changelog, a podcast featuring the hackers, the leaders, and the innovators of software development. I'm Adam Stacoviak, editor-in-chief of Changelog. On today's show, Jared and I are talking with Ben Halpern, founder and webmaster of dev.to, a platform for developers to talk about software. Last Wednesday, they open sourced the entire code base of this platform, so we want to talk through all the details with Ben. We talked through the backstory, how Ben realized this could become a business, how the team was formed, their motivations for open sourcing it, and why they didn't open source it from the start, the technical stack, and their vision for the future of the site.
So Ben, it's a big day for you. Tell us what's going on.
Yeah, so today at 1 p.m. Eastern, we open sourced the dev.to codebase for the whole community, and we are really hoping folks get as excited to take part in this project as they've sort of indicated to us every step of the journey. But today is the big day.
Today's a big day. So as we're recording this, it's August 8th. And it's about 3:15 p.m. Eastern time, so it's been open source for a couple of hours. By the time you listeners are listening to this, it's a week later. But today is the big day, and so I guess we should start by saying congratulations.
Definitely.
It's been a real journey. Like I kind of wish I'd thought to even open source on day one. It just didn't even cross my mind when this was just a little side project. But we took a lot of time in the past few months and weeks to really put this on our roadmap, and we finally made it happen.
Very cool. Let's back up a moment and let's get the full story for those coming to this show not familiar with dev.to and the dev community that you're building over there. You said it started as a little side project. Can you give us a little bit of the backstory of the website and how it came to be?
Yeah, so the whole thing started as a project I wanted to sort of solve developer issues in one way or another, but it was kind of vague. It was just an idea. I started with a Twitter account I called The Practical Dev, and I kind of started growing it little by little. I started just by actually just posting programming links and things I found throughout the web and things I thought people would be interested in. I quickly realized that the more I injected my own voice and my opinions and my editorial and my humor and my jokes, the more it caught on, and it really started taking off at that point. The project, the most notable sort of jokes I was telling was the O'Reilly parody covers, the book covers. That was the first, I think, major chapter in the whole story. Everything else was just kind of futzing around. Yeah, but that wasn't really the end goal per se. I really wanted to create valuable resources, sort of solve some of the problems I was actually kind of making fun of with the O'Reilly covers along the way. the chaos, the bizarre, windy path that is a software development career, the lack of sort of consistency in some of the resources, and frankly, the lack of like tooling in actual kind of community environments and stuff like that. I just, as much as programmers always find a way to solve their problems, I just didn't think that this was being done in any special way, and I really thought we could do a little better if we kept at it.
So you said you were doing this as a side project that has since turned into not just yourself, but a team of people and a burgeoning business. So tell us that transition and kind of where it became. You mentioned the Twitter account, the Practical Dev, and then you have the website dev.to, dev.to. Tell us what the website started out as. I know it's been through many iterations, kind of where it's come to, and we'll get back around to the open sourcing of it all after we kind of understand it in a holistic fashion.
Yeah, so the website really started out as just like whatever I thought would be most valuable based on my resources at the time, my sort of thoughts about the future. Like the thing about a platform where people share software knowledge and just have discussions and all that stuff, it's obviously a huge chicken egg problem. So at no point did I really like try to get ahead of myself in terms of what the project could be. So the first thing that ever happened on the website was I did an interview with DHH, and I just sort of knew that if I emailed him and I asked nicely and made it pretty easy for him to say yes, that he would share some knowledge. Rails 5 was about to come out. So that was the first dev.to thing, and then I did a few other interviews with some open source folks, and that was kind of the first step, like to really sort of make this happen. But I also like had a different idea at the time. I thought it might be a little more high touch, like these interviews and stuff like that. But then based on feedback, based on like, you know, noticing what was going on, what people were sort of most interested in, it really kind of more quickly became what it is today, which is a platform for anyone to write anything about software and have a community really interact with it, one that's like really backed by a code of conduct that we really care about and enforce, and really just kind of be a place that like actually feels like a community, but it's also actually quite large right now. So yeah, that's kind of like the journey on the product itself, the software. But really when it was just me, I was working on another startup that I'd been doing for a while. It was called text.com. It was a student textbook exchange. I was sort of the hired technical person to really make that happen, and we had like, you know, growth and stuff like that, but it had issues as a business, and that's kind of when I started getting a little distracted, and I was still working at that project, but finding like a little bit more interested in this other thing from time to time. That's when I sort of happened to meet Jess Lee, who is the first co-founder in this organization, and she came to me through a friend, after she had recently graduated from a boot camp, and she had a really interesting sort of professional background, but was really brand new to coding. And she just needed some mentorship, some advice, and I knew her through a childhood friend that she was a mutual friend with, and it really clicked right away. Like I felt like we got along. She was really easy to work with, and she really, as we kind of started talking about dev.to a little bit more, she really sort of clung to some of the visions because herself as kind of a newer programmer and also a woman of color who is not necessarily part of some of the in crowds that I think a lot of software developers really don't notice because they're part of the in crowd, so they take it for granted that like some of these things are pretty straightforward. Like even just simple things, just like there's a lot of insidership in the whole thing. It's very cliquey. And it just kind of like a lot of things happen extremely organically when really perhaps they should be a little bit more organized. And because the organicness is kind of fun and natural, but it also leads to a lot of like unhealthy situations where a lot of really valuable software developers get alienated or left out. And it's really just a shame. So her involvement just kind of as a friend early on, really turned into more like, okay, this is kind of a real thing. And it was really great because she's like so different from me. I'm extremely sort of abstract, chaotic, and disorganized, and she's like totally the opposite, and really helped bring order and discipline to the whole thing. Traits I really like appreciate in the process and in others, but like is really not what I bring to the table. She and I worked on it for a little while I still like, worked really hard on my other company at the same time. But ultimately, like, kind of, we were just gaining so much momentum, while the other thing was actually kind of like we were trying to pull it off, but it wasn't like necessarily working so much at the time. And what we wound up doing was I took the company back to the other company because I thought I'd been, working hard but pretty distracted on the side project. I thought it was the fairest thing to do was to kind of fold it into the other company, which kind of quickly just turned into this new company, which is Dev Community Inc. And we've been working on it ever since. It's been about 1.5 years since we became a real company.
You mentioned, I guess, earlier in your relationship with Jess, the sort of the discussions around vision, and Jared mentioned like burgeoning business. And I'm thinking, like, what were some of the vision things you shared that got her excited? And then what were some of the indicators that made you think, well, this can go from, my thing I do on the side because I'm kind of bored with my stuff and I want to play, essentially, to, hey, this could be a business and I should, what were some of the vision things you shared to say, hey, this could be a business and we should put a lot more effort into this?
Yeah, well, I always treated it like as, I worked my butt off trying to make the project grow, but wasn't so completely certain about all the like, it seems easy for me to think back linearly at the time, but thinking back to some of my conversations I had, it's very clear I had a lot of vision for like the purpose of the project, but not necessarily how it would be organized and stuff like that. And Jess and I just kind of hung out and talked a lot. Like, it really was just like a mentorship kind of role at first, and naturally, just like we started talking more about dev.to and like things we were doing with that, and I kind of tried to downplay things at the time because I really was super loyal to the people I was working with and stuff. So I always made sure that people knew it was just a side project, and that's really how I felt through and through. But it was really impossible to ignore how much momentum the project had. It's hard enough to get like your friends and family to use something you're really trying to make succeed. Like sometimes,
yes.
Like seriously, like so as soon as I made like the login feature a thing on dev.to and didn't even like, it was like hidden in the footer basically, I started getting people logging in. Like, that was just a really remarkable thing. Like, I've launched things that like we've sat around and like, oh, where are all the people? Like, who I thought like we're making something really valuable that's like way better than the alternative, but where are all the people? And but this was such a passion project. It was really clear that like we didn't have to get things perfect because we were really great at like having people understand like our purpose, our vision, our values. That was really something we sort of really put out there from day one. So like either like it was something I put out there from day one, and then like we always just kind of like put that front and center, and then things just kind of happened. I remember I had a conversation with Saran from Code Newbie when she lived in New York, and I recall that she was telling me how she ran her business, and that kind of clicked into me the idea that this like really could be a business. Like, I knew that was like a possibility. I wasn't naive, but it really gave me a bit of courage. Like, she had just recently left her job to do Code Newbie full time when I sat down to just kind of pick her brain. And that was a moment like really early on, like that just sort of helped give a sense of like, okay, this is possible. This is like a grounding moment. And not that I was afraid of entrepreneurship. I've been doing that sort of my whole life. So I'd put my heart into this project so much that the last thing I wanted to do was ruin it by making it a business, because I knew this would succeed no matter what. Like, if it just existed as some kind of project, like something where the scope was smaller, where the expectations were smaller. So even though I'd been an entrepreneur in some way since I was 12, I feel like, in one way or another. The notion that this could be an actual business is something I was really protective of, because I thought it was such a magnificent project, and if it was going to be a business, I wanted that to be because that's actually the best thing for the project, and we didn't want to extract value. Like that's just something you can do with these kind of projects, and everything had to be additive. So we really have been extremely thoughtful at each step of the way, and I think that's like, our special superpower is like we've given ourselves enough like rope to be thoughtful with everything. Like it's easy once you start a business to be really sprinting the whole time, just trying to pay every bill, like to pay all the expenses and stuff. But just due to the nature of how this started, the community took so well to everything at every stage. It really was a reflection of my personal values at every step of the way. It just happened. It really it reflected on the skills of everyone I was involved with, like professionally, like everyone who's able to get come together and help out. Just timing, like the people involved. Really, really great.
If you ask me, I mean, something I've always appreciated and noticed has been like this Ben Halperism kind of thing in there, like this sort of like I don't want to say weird, but just different type of humor that's very clear when you hear it and you see it. Like your humor is very you, so to speak. I don't know if that's clear to you, Jerry, but that's super clear to me.
I would say it's much, and I agree with you. I would say that it's a lot like a good author will inject their voice into their writing.
Right.
And dev.to very much, from my perspective, has reflected Ben's personality for a long time. Obviously, then that has other problems of like, okay, and how do we scale this and make it a brand that's equitable and not just Ben Halpern? And I think you've been doing that along the way. But yeah, I would say that there's a reflection of Ben's personality or humor or geekiness, and that is why people like the Twitter account, kind of embedded it into the website. Is that something that was intentional, or it just happened, or do you even disagree with that sentiment?
No, I think that's really I think that's definitely what's going on. Some stuff's intentional, some stuff just happens. I have a background in like a very like multidisciplinary background, a few sort of different types of attempted careers, and all in the sort of creative space. Mm-hmm. And so like when we talk voice, like we know how to sort of talk about that stuff within our organization. Even though I'm a software developer, like we have like documents about like what the dev.to voice is. It's all super vague. It's like my random rant. It's like I mean I can like read from the document. It's just like say this, not this kind of things. And I still myself do most of the communication, but anytime like we just there's a lot of stuff we do, and anytime we have to take care of a thing, we really treat it like we're really careful about that stuff. Like we really it comes through, and it's like we didn't just like sort of take that on as a business initiative. It was very natural. Like we recognized like what people cared about and what programmers cared about in general, like the good and the bad of like certain types of ways of engaging people and little things like that. So yeah, it's all an effort in like just being careful and nuanced, and like not sprinting too fast that you kind of lose track of these things, because that's what happens. Like we don't want to be boring. We don't want to lose our sense of values. Like that's like the whole project works because we remain thoughtful about these things as we scale and as we grow, and we try to get ahead of it when we think what we're doing might not scale and stuff like that.
It's also clear to me too that the thoughtfulness, not just on what you say and how you say it, or not being boring as you said, but also what you said before was making sure this should be a business, which I think is a wise move, because there's sometimes a side project is just fun, and sure, maybe it has some entrepreneurial parts to it where there is maybe some money to be made, but doesn't have to be a full-fledged everybody in business. And I think that's kind of an interesting line to toe. Can you speak to that a bit, like the on either side of that line of like when it was a side project to now it being a business, and how that ended up playing out for you?
Oh yeah, I mean, as a side project, I explicitly kind of like the whole thing was really a lot of clarity for me. I was just better at this than other things I'd done before, but I from the get-go, even before I even knew what it was going to be, I committed to giving this 10 years to work. And if it was just,
that's a long time.
I mean, I thought like, well, I'm still going to like programming in 10 years. I thought that was pretty obvious. And the biggest issue I had with some other projects is like, I don't know, like I didn't have such a fundamental care about them that if they didn't sort of take off quickly, that like I'd keep excited about it and stuff. And like I love this stuff, and I can only do it if it's exciting to me. But so yeah, like early on when it's just a project and you have 10 years to do it, you can take like your job is to like have long walks with like an audiobook in to really sort of think about like the purpose of something, or like the like random little things. And I sometimes took like 2 weeks to make a decision, where like in a business you've kind of like this has to be done by the end of the day kind of stuff. And we've also instilled that kind of values since we have been in business. Like sometimes we have to hurry, but like sometimes we just like take our time to get something right, because a lot of the time like the answer comes like, if you guys didn't ship this in 2 weeks, like if nobody like had the effort to like ship this feature, maybe we shouldn't ship this feature and stuff like that. So like we really try to like lean into like how we feel about certain parts of the project. Like obviously we need to fix bugs, fix vulnerabilities, fix user experience issues, but like in terms of the project, like we tried to instill that kind of like side project kind of values, and that really only happens if it's like really happening early on. But then when it came to be a business, there's still like that area where like I myself am too scattered to make a lot of this stuff work. There's a lot of like, we have lawyers and we have all sorts of stuff, and so Jess was critical there. But then the third co-founder in the business, isn't as front and center sometimes, but if you're part of the community, you know him, is Peter Frank, who was my partner in the other business. And he really brings a lot of the like need to know sort of experience and just like effort in certain areas. Like he actually loves some of the stuff that I don't find I have any patience for, and Jess is kind of the like middle person in terms of like she writes code, but she also like sort of has a handle on some of the finer details, just in terms of like I've never spoken to our lawyers, even though I founded this like company, because that's Peter's domain or Jess's, depending on the context. And you gotta like do what works for you and stuff like that. And I'm very thoughtful and careful about the actual business direction, the way we make money, the way we do this and that. But like there's a lot of heavy lifting in terms of running a business that like, thank goodness I have people who are excited about doing that kind of stuff, because that's never been my thing.
This episode is brought to you by Linode, our cloud server of choice. It's so easy to get started. Head to linode.com/changelog, pick a plan, pick a distro, and pick a location, and in minutes deploy your Linode cloud server. They have drool-worthy hardware, native SSD cloud storage, 40 gigabit network, Intel E5 processors, simple, easy control panel, 99.9% uptime guaranteed. We are never down. 24/7 customer support, 10 data centers, 3 regions, anywhere in the world, they got you covered. Head to linode.com/changelog to get $20 in hosting credit. That's 4 months free. Once again, linode.com/changelog. we're now at a point where it's a business, right? It's legit. Obviously, you're open sourcing today. It's a big deal. But I mean, Jared and I've been paying attention to what you've been doing for a long time. We've talked years ago and have been to some degree involved in what you're doing, but not directly, as just more so as a community, not so much as one of the co-founders, of course. But now that it's here, I mean, you've culminated quite a community, lots of traffic, lots of fresh articles. We link to you often through our newsletter and our news feed and stuff like that. So we're very familiar with like what you're doing here, and you've done a great job on the community front. What do you think is the secret sauce to building this particular community, not community in general, but this particular community?
I would say like, merging kind of like fundamental human community needs with practical software development needs. So, and not really giving either one of those things more attention than the other one. So like there's so much humanity in software development, but there's also so much like this is exactly how we do things and it's not going to change in terms of sharing, in terms of like how we code. Like we search for the answers, we search for opinions, we get consensus on like what the right framework is to use. There's no like going off and doing your own thing without really having to like know exactly why you're doing that. So there's so much like need for like community, both a fundamental thing just for motivation and like things like that. So one of our members just recently made a post talking about how he shut down his the language he was writing, and the community kind of was like, yeah, like this stuff. They gave him a lot of support in that. Like shutting down a project you've been working on for a few years is a pretty big moment, and he wasn't like teaching anyone anything in that moment, but people who had been following him were just kind of there for him. But then there's so much other just kind of we try to kind of deliver the space for people to find answers to things that are a little bit more nuanced, to discuss topics which are interesting to them and may be interesting to some people. We try to send the types of traffic to all sorts of different places and not just like the lowest common denominator of software stuff. Like we try to just be careful about the user experience, but also not too opinionated on it, because everyone kind of makes their own user experience. So the platform is really just a generic place where people can write blog posts and engage in a certain type of threaded discussion. But we just as administrators try to really make that happen in just the way software developers need it, because some of the core insight early on was like these things happen, but in really generic ways, and there's no reason we can't do it with a lot of care for the software developer experience.
If you were forced to liken it to something else in terms of like describing to somebody who may not know about it, even non-software things, what do you like in dev.to? Like, is it kind of like Medium, but different because of this? Is it kind of like Stack Overflow without the rules? Like, where does the best comparison for people who don't know about it?
Yeah, the most like straight up model I think for engaging right away is it's Medium, but more specific for developers. And everything that's different from the platform is really like that, except then we kind of take it in the direction that we give people the opportunity to really build their portfolio out a little bit, show off their GitHub projects. So in that sense, it's a bit like LinkedIn if LinkedIn wasn't full of like recruitment spam and like just friends from college who added you and you don't really care about their like finance links and stuff like that. So like,
right,
a little bit like it's like a professional platform, more devoted to software developers and stuff, but like we're not too prescriptive that like everyone in the world needs this right now. Like, hopefully it'll be so valuable someday that like everyone will be on board and everything like that. But the fact that it's really centered around the content, and we don't like log in, wall, any of that stuff. Like we're really it's a place where a lot of people get to contribute back to the greater software development community no matter what. So like the greater software development community probably lands on dev.to through Google searches, your newsletter, Twitter, things like that. So like,
right,
it's just kind of a part of the ecosystem. And in form factor, it kind of happens the same way kind of Medium established this idea that you can sort of host your stuff on a different platform. We make it really easy for people to host on their own blogs, but then kind of cross post to dev.to, because that's like, I think, a really valuable, like, we try not to we try to have a shared ownership of everything that's going on if possible. And just, be really thoughtful about, like, this is your space and it's our space. It's like a shared kind of environment. And there's a lot of, like, deep down human things going on with those ideas. It's not as like, it's not so much an economic exchange as much as like a really complicated human exchange. But yeah, so Medium for software developers in a way, but we with a lot of like little things that just make it different.
So as you have success, and as you have had success, you start to come up against other problems and things that I start to think of, where I think, I'm glad I'm not in Ben's shoes as dev.to grows, and your team's shoes, of course, is you start to deal with, I just thought of this because you mentioned the recruiters on LinkedIn. Well, eventually there's going to be recruiters coming to dev.to. There's going to be spammers coming to dev.to. There'll be trolls, which usually pop up first. As all of these little social networks and forums and things become larger, Twitter's having a huge problem right now. Of course, it's massive, right? Mainstream. But if you're software mainstream, you're still going to have a lot of people using it. Are these things you're starting to deal with, or is it too small yet? Big, but not big enough where you're hitting a lot of trolls, you're hitting a lot of spammers, people who are generally there to create terrible content or do mean things?
Our sort of core differentiator, as I said, we sort of got really big on Twitter at first. So like this, we really know the Twitter sort of universe, and our main differentiator is that, like, there is any kind of moderation, compared to Twitter. Like that whole kind of platform, as massive as it is, it really seems like a place that didn't even consider harassment and trolling and stuff as like a problem until like the rest of the world called them out on it.
It's almost too late. Well, Reddit took a hard stance for freedom of speech against moderation early on.
Yeah, so we are certainly pro free speech in every way that's practical, but like I think some of these other platforms are a little bit naive in terms of human behavior, and especially like just how certain classes of people are a little bit more vulnerable, or a lot more vulnerable than others. And this is a shared space and a community effort. So early on, of course, we have our code of conduct and our values we sort of profess, but we also like really took a serious technical approach to dealing with moderation in what we think is a pretty scalable way, like more so than I think a lot of other people are doing it. Just in terms of like when people first sign up, there's we purposefully make sign up only available to folks with existing social accounts. So like you don't really need to link anything so deeply to your Twitter or GitHub once you're on, but you actually need to come from one of those places to engage in the first place, which is a pretty low barrier. I think between Twitter and GitHub, most software developers are engaged, and anyone who for any good reason doesn't have either of those accounts, we work with them. But when you sign up with an existing social profile, we have a lot of information on you. We know you didn't create this Twitter account today, because if you did, we might flag you for potential spam or potential harassment because we banned your other one. Like little things like that. It's not so complicated, but we really thought about it early on, and every time we've had like an influx of more spam, we've had to kind of solve new problems, but we've also tried to get ahead of them as much as we can. But also it's very difficult, and we change our sort of, feature set subtly from time to time as we grow. Like I don't think, and that's why we've sort of evolved. I didn't really get into it too much, but we have a whole kind of area for private messaging and small chat rooms and things like that, which are actually kind of a really great area to have. Like this is a smaller area for conversation and help and things like that, and it kind of it's like a breakout room from some of the big, wide open kind of threaded conversations that might happen elsewhere on the site. Mm-hmm. So and like, I think even just like folks on the team. So like there's 6 total people, including the 3 founders, and not everybody like somebody will start building something just because it's kind of how everyone else does it, and I'll kind of like have to make a big fuss about how I think like we don't want to do it just how everyone else does it, because that's where it leads to these like, you know, terrible harassing situations. And so it's a lot of little things, but there's kind of, we have a technical solution. We have a form of sort of crowdsourced moderation, which also kind of has a system which quickly can elevate things to the admins, and it hasn't been so massive, like our scale isn't so big that we can't deal with that pretty well with the current system. It's always a real shame though when we deal with any kind of harassment. It's almost always like something gets shared to Hacker News or Reddit, and there's a big influx of jerks, and it's a real shame, and like it happens from time to time, and we don't try to like create a situation where that could never happen, because that's kind of like impossible. But we deal with it really quickly, and we don't we try to ensure that the dialogue doesn't get toxic. We really try to be diplomatic with community members who are, you know, good, constructive community members most of the time, but then like here they really like, you know, they really weren't respectful and things like that. So like we try not to make people feel like they're being policed, but of course I think it's getting harder and harder, and I do like kind of freak out sometimes that like you know, it saddens me if anyone ever has a bad experience, but at our scale sometimes people do, but the core of people like really understand that like at the very least we're trying harder than the other platforms, and we always have. Like that's what's
HQ would like to talk.
Oh, I'm being
Someone wants to talk to you.
It's HQ.
Alexa, stop. The office is calling me. Wait, hold on. Can I actually maybe answer that?
Sure, go ahead and answer it.
Now thinking there might be something on fire. All right, Alexa, call HQ.
Calling HQ.
Hey Ben, did you see our message in heads up?
Yeah, is there anything I need to do? All right, I'll try to do that right now. All right, bye. Alexa, stop.
All right, bear with us here a second while Ben hacks on some fun stuff. Here's a little interlude from BMC. You're gonna love it.
And we are back, and we forgot what we were talking about because reasons. This is what happens when people who run websites hop on Skype and talk for a while is things happen, right, Ben?
Yeah, it's happening like less these days in general, but today was a big, you know, announcement day. We moved the repo over, like little things were expected to go wrong, and you know, just one of those things.
Just one of those days. Well,
and you know, it's a small team. Like I don't have like a VP of engineering who deals with these things.
You are the
like,
VP of engineering.
Yeah.
that's right. Well, when changelog.com goes down, I'm the VP of engineering as well. So we are very well aware of such situations. Or I shouldn't say dev.to is not down. There were issues. Alexa she was having some problems. But let's continue talking. Let's turn towards the open source because we teed off the conversation around that. We haven't quite made our way back to it yet. So let's get started on that. And one thing I wanted to talk to you about it, you mentioned in the opening that as it started as a side project, you just didn't think about it. And you had wished that you had just done it from the very beginning because you probably would have done a lot of things subtly or maybe even majorly differently. One thing that you did do was pre-announce open sourcing it. I'm not sure how long back, and then went about getting ready for it. So maybe tell us your strategy there and why there was a pre-announcement, and then time passed, and then finally today, August 8th, the final open sourcing. Give us that story.
Yeah, so the pre-announcement was really a matter of letting people know like where we stood on the issue and how excited we were about it. Like as soon as the things kind of started falling in place, it got more and more exciting. I really felt like at every stage, anytime we gave people the opportunity to have more creative control over the project that weren't like directly within, so you know, from my voice, and it's like that kind of thing, it always led to kind of, exciting outcomes in every way. So like we started talking about it because we were just excited about it, and we're pretty transparent about everything we want to be doing. So if we haven't really talked about it, it's because we're not really like, totally sure what our plan is. But that was like a while ago, like many months ago, and we didn't really ever kind of create a deadline, and we just, kept having like new things come up, new features we had to build, like new things we had to do for the current scale of the project. And but we were still just dying to do this because it was just seemed like such an exciting thing to do with the community. And we finally just kind of like realized we were actually getting closer and closer to feeling like we had the capacity to manage that part of the project, which is this whole new thing. It's there's a lot of benefits to not having to manage a bunch of people, doing like taking part in different ways and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And but we finally felt like we were kind of getting ready for that, and we put a date on it, picked August 8th because it's 8/8 and that's a lucky number. And we worked hard. We worked with some outsiders to kind of audit the code for possible security vulnerabilities. We expect little things to possibly come up, but like you can't really rely on obfuscation when all the code's out there. But we know that in the long run, when we are fully open, the long-term security story is really promising. And just like at our core, it was like became such a strong part of our values. And I like just didn't think that this project was important enough to like warrant open sourcing at the time. And just, in the future, I wouldn't really care that much about like the importance of a project. But honestly, like early on, it was just like it was just the Rails website I made over the holiday break one year when I wasn't doing anything else. And but when things started to turn, I started to kind of get my co-founders like really pumped about the idea that like the community is more valuable than the code, and we can really put ourselves out there, and we don't have to worry that like other people can now build a clone if they wanted to with our exact code. But it's really not the code that's so special, it's the community. And the community is really what's going to help make the code special. Like we really think that the future is strong because we're going to have a lot of like really talented and really enthusiastic developers in our ear and in our code base.
The security aspect is an interesting and that's something that's come up recently with other things, but like super recent was Homebrew. There was somebody who gained access to Homebrew in 30 minutes, like committed access to it via supply chain attacks, basically package maintainers having issues. So what made you think, what made you decide to do like a security audit? I mean, I don't think we did that, Jared. Did we do that? You probably did it, but we didn't have a third party do it.
And we also open sourced at an earlier stage in our software history.
Mm-hmm.
So Ben probably had multiple years of development going back, whereas we had maybe 6 months. And we did not open source from the very beginning, from the relaunch, but we had that in mind from the very beginning. And so there's a huge difference just in your mindset, even just like subconsciously, I believe, when you know that that's eventually going to happen. And so, our security audit was probably just me thinking through everything and then double checking and making sure there was nothing super stupid. And then, of course, we've had plenty of people report the situations publicly. I mean, publicly meaning through the GitHub issues, and then even privately stuff they found. And so our security has improved from it. But like you said, Adam, there's definitely other security holes that can open up as well. So that's an interesting move, bringing in outsiders to do audits. Ben, can you tell us more about that?
Exactly to your point. Like we had obviously valued security. We've had a lot of we have a pretty like modest bug bounty, and we've uncovered a lot of things that way, like little exploits in terms of our just in every little way, like how we host images maybe in certain contexts, or like little things. And thankfully we've never had any like major leaks or any major vulnerabilities, but little things along the way have been brought to our attention. And yeah, the process is just to kind of deal with those as good as we can. But when the entire code base is open, we actually get much better at most of those kind of finding those vulnerabilities more quickly. Like the code gets way more eyes before it gets into the code base, but the sort of existing code becomes possibly a little bit more vulnerable in case there's just any kind of endpoints which expose an entire database model, perhaps instead of just a few columns or anything like that, where like the user doesn't sort of realize this, but any JSON endpoint that like tells you one extra thing that maybe is not public information. And that process is just an ongoing battle. And we didn't think we thought that if there's anywhere we have blind spots to, it's the like security vulnerabilities we've already written ourselves and like didn't notice and or anything like that. And but we I think we like really paid attention to all the like major hotspots. Rails has a lot of convention that we follow pretty well, and we kind of we know not to run arbitrary code, and we use white lists and not black lists. Like we take it all really seriously, but there's always just the unknown, and we have a lot of friends in the community though, and several people were very helpful. And I think any possible vulnerabilities we find in this process, I think are not going to be severe, and we will deal with them as they come. But it's just a matter of programming. And had we been open source from the get-go, yeah, like this is not a process we would have had to spend so much time on. And that's really my big like, damn, I wish we were open source right away, because we would have been much cleaner the whole way. Like you can't really get away with things just in passing. But overall, like we got here, and I'm
Right.
always amazed at how successful this whole project has been and how much it impacts people. So like no major regrets, but like definitely like I don't think I would ever close source something that in the future that didn't have a very good reason for being closed source.
This episode is brought to you by our friends at GoCD. GoCD is an open source continuous delivery server built by ThoughtWorks. Check them out at gocd.org or on GitHub at github.com/GoCD. GoCD provides continuous delivery out of the box with its built-in pipelines, advanced traceability, and value stream visualization. With GoCD, you can easily model, orchestrate, and visualize complex workflows from end to end with no problem. They support Kubernetes and modern infrastructure with elastic on-demand agents and cloud deployments. To learn more about GoCD, visit gocd.org/changelog. It's free to use, and they have professional support and enterprise add-ons available from ThoughtWorks. Once again, gocd.org/changelog.
Ben, one of the reasons why I asked about that time span, the pre-announcement versus the open sourcing, I was curious. My intuition was maybe there was a little bit of accountability there. Like once you announce a thing, you kind of have to do it. And open sourcing, since it's not like a feature, although it can be considered one, on your product roadmap, is the kind of thing that would just continue. Like, yes, we're going to eventually do it, But once you like write a blog post and make an announcement, people are then there's this expectation of it's going to happen. And so maybe there was a little bit of that in there as well. Curious also about the time span and bringing in the third parties for helping. Security is one aspect of being not prepared for open source. The other aspect, which is way more personal for me, and I'm curious if it's the same for you, and perhaps inappropriately like prideful, is like now there's this, it's that like that dream where you're at school with your clothes off, and everybody's laughing at you. Is that fear of, oh no, everyone's gonna see my code? Was there any of that involved?
Oh yeah, I mean that has been like with me and the whole thing. You're totally right on. This is why we pre-announced it. We needed to give ourselves a deadline, but also we pre-announced it so that we could, kind of like benefit from the additional kind of mojo that would come along. So like, we got a month of being able to like really like keep people updated about something that was happening soon, so that it gave us, we get to really justify this as a feature more if we get to talk about it. Like if it's just a private thing, then it's just like, we don't derive, like, we can't get people excited about anything that we don't talk about. So, but yeah, it was about ripping off that Band-Aid, giving it a deadline, forcing us to really make it happen. And then, yeah, you're absolutely right about the just exposure to how terrible a programmer we all are. Like, it's a really terrifying feeling. And I really like personally felt like I've been able to cross the barrier. Like, I just feel like I've, made myself the class clown enough as a programmer, like enough times that I just can acknowledge, like, coding is hard and I don't know what I'm doing half the time. But at the same time, we have the proof that we make good stuff. Like we have a lot of really good ideas. We know what we're doing. We don't have all the answers, but we have a lot of good ones. And just like that positioning, like to be ready to just go do it is totally what helps this happen. And also like I know different programming languages. I've like done different kinds of development, different types of web frameworks, or like other kinds of programming along the way, but Rails is something I'm pretty comfortable with. Like I feel like I get it and I know it, and it's also very boring and old, and that's a real feature as far as I'm concerned. Like before this project, I was working with a lot of like newer technologies, which was kind of exciting, but you find this GitHub issue, which is just like the only answer to how you can build this thing is like hope that this feature ships like at some point this year.
Right.
And so yeah, just like happy to be using some pretty boring technology. Jeff Atwood has a post about why they chose Rails for discourse, and it's for a lot of the same reasons. And it's just like a lot of things went into it, but yeah, like just pretty comfortable about that part. Like people get to see me with my pants down, but but it's part of the spectacle now. I don't feel like I'm in my private space. It's a public spectacle, and I get to put on a little song and dance.
Do you feel like, you mentioned that you wish you'd maybe done it earlier. Do you feel like it would have changed the direction, not so much of your mission as a, platform or company or community, but more so maybe the speed at which you can deliver features or the distraction or the focus? Do you feel like, given that it's been just, the necessary eyes on the code base has allowed you some level of focus, whereas had it been open source sooner, you may have had more shiny objects and more attraction and more just distraction, so to speak, around getting to where you're at now?
Yeah, it's hard to say that given like how much momentum we've built up and how much we've really been able to like solve our own problems as opposed to listening to all the random voices in the world. Yeah, it's hard to say that like the alternate solution, the alternate would have been better. The interesting thing is that now that we have done this project, and I can't imagine like, leaving this project anytime soon to do something that has nothing to do with like this community that we've been a part of. So, I'm really in this for the long haul. So when I think about like the future in terms of open sourcing from day one on things, I really put myself in the mindset of like, wow, we already have all these thousands of friends out in the world, committed to, our vision, our sort of, like working towards our ideals and things like that. So like, it probably was, pretty okay that things went the way they did. But we're excited for like, the future projects, which will just kind of like develop out in the open. And really, I think open source is so magical, and I don't think people work towards the most ambitious things all the time. And I think what we're doing is pretty ambitious, and the doing it like through open source is just kind of like remarkably cool. Like I don't think the world understands all the time just how amazing it is when many software developers get to like have a say or like contribute their expertise. We're also siloed, solving the same problems without talking to one another very much. And the whole thing is just going to be like at the very least a fantastic project. And really, when we were justifying open source to ourselves, it's like if the open source thing doesn't work out for some reason, it will be because we like crashed and burned spectacularly, trying something pretty fun, as opposed to like, being overly concerned about the like possible downsides of being out in the open and with our pants down and stuff like that. So like, we don't want to expose our user base to any like danger or anything like that. But as far as the business goes, if we put ourselves out there as maintainers of a really cool big open source project, like, our worst case scenario is a spectacular failure, as opposed to pittering off and not amounting to anything really notable or awesome. So it's easy to justify even like the worst case scenario that way.
Let's talk about the tech for a real quick minute, because I know you're downplaying Rails as boring and all that. I still think Rails is super cool myself, but I realize that the hype cycle has moved on. That being said, you've written and you've talked a lot about the way that you're going about using Rails, and one thing that you've done with dev.to, which is awesome and something that we strive for, is you made it super fast. And Rails is not known for being super fast. I'm talking about load time and performance in terms of time to first paint and all that kind of stuff. Is there interesting tidbits in the code, ways you've gone about using Rails, or things that you've written that we can link to in the notes, or points in the code that we can point people to show how you're going about doing things that might be a little bit different than normal, or are allowing you to achieve the speed that you have on page load?
Yeah, so because this was a side project, so much of it was like scratching my own itch, and I'm a very impatient internet user. In terms of like people's blog posts, if it's not loading quickly when all I need to do is read text on a page, like the most basic thing that shipped with HTML version 1, it's a frustrating thing. So from the technical perspective, this project was really built around performance ideas in a lot of ways, and also delivering performance around the whole world. Americans don't realize how slow the internet can be in other parts of the world because of latency. So, but despite that, we chose Rails, which is not like, built for speed as the primary use case. But what we do is Rails doesn't do a lot of the work on most page loads. So like 90% of traffic is handled exclusively at the CDN layer. And so we deliver pages which don't have the user's sort of personal identified information on that first page load, but the additional sort of stuff is a quick asynchronous call. So like worst case scenario, you're waiting longer for your image to show up. But even that is actually cached locally in local storage. So like basically you're getting the edge cached version of pages on the site. And I have written about this, and I actually did a talk at RailsConf on the same subject, so we can put the links to all that stuff. And yeah, it's just like a few neat tricks, but also like understanding, like as a team, you have to know you have these constraints. You can't use the current user method in the view, like in most cases, because we don't send over like a server rendered view. We send over like an edge cached view. And the edge is also like, so there's a few ways to do that with edge. So with like VLC and stuff like that on the edge. So that's varnish caching language, VCL, sorry. And there's a few different like ways people do that, and like we're taking kind of the like less standard way to even do that, because most edge caching still kind of makes round trips home for certain information in certain cases. But we just said like, no, we want to serve, if 1,000 people are reading the same article, we don't want to recompute it 1,000 times. You're getting it once, and when the page changes, you get the new page. And we this is possible because of the services we use. So Fastly, our CDN, has basically, they have instant purge. So if we have caching issues, it's a bug on our end. Their API is really just virtually instant, like 100, 200 millisecond cache clear. So when a user updates an article, we serve a fresh one once, and then the rest of them are the cached version. And that's just like the architecture that makes sense for like website content driven stuff. I'm sure like the same would, I'm sure all the podcasts that are doing anything right are also coming from some kind of CDN, and really like people's location, the place things are getting served from, the way they're being cached, it's all kind of like fundamentals of computing. But I think some of this stuff gets abstracted away, and then programmers kind of forget it's part of the problem. But that was never my mindset. It was like, if anything, like it's a very typical Rails app with like one kind of differentiating feature, which would be the same kind of approach you would take with any framework, because the big difference here is the speed of light is constant. Like you can't change that, so you need to bring the code closer to the people. And people are used to doing that with like purely static content. But Fastly like has always been, trying to push people to do more stuff this way, like from themselves. And I didn't coordinate with them, but I read their blog posts and it was a great idea. So I ran with it. And it's funny, like people themselves really know the best use cases for their own software, and sometimes you just have to listen. And there's some really cool stuff out there. And we have the same concept with some of our other services. We use Algolia, which is a distributed search index. So we don't host our own search, because we actually have nodes distributed all over the world. So if you're in Tokyo, you're going to get a search response and a site response, both from the edge, like within milliseconds. So, I do live in the US, so this wouldn't really be a problem for me. But at some point in my life, I became very interested in not being exclusive to the rest of the world, and from a business perspective, it just made sense to do that right away. Trying to tack on that kind of optimization at the end, like when you already have like all your like. So if open sourcing was tough because we had already kind of just been writing code without that in mind right away, optimizing edge caching like that would be 10 times tougher if that wasn't initially your use case, because you'd have to really start tearing things out, and it would be really frustrating and possibly not worth it. And so yeah, like, and the wonderful thing about being like the coder, the like, founder, or like the project manager or whatever, it's like, I didn't have to like convince anyone else that this was a good idea. I just had to really know in my heart that this was a good thing to like try to do and see if it worked. And it really did. And like, over time we've like found things that like, damn, I wish we would have like not gone so hard on this part, because it made everything else harder. But like things kind of work themselves out over time, and we get to like a happy medium. And it's just really exciting, and I liken it to like being a painter. So like if you had to like describe, if you're trying to found a project and you don't know how to code or do the thing that needs to get done, I feel like it's kind of like being a painter, but you can't paint, like trying to tell someone else like live what you want the canvas to be, but like you need to describe it instead of just doing it. And early on in a project, like a software developer has so many superpowers in terms of just being able to like take that paintbrush and do whatever they want, like translate what's in their head to what's on the canvas. And like I just felt like early on in the project as a business and as a project, just the fact that like I could kind of work that all in myself without too much pressure and like without too many external sort of obligations. I really chose a technical project that was really up my alley. I didn't try to like learn 100 new things to do this. It was like, okay, what do I actually know better than anything? And what's kind of the most optimized thing I can do with what I know? So a lot of this was really a growing up for me. Like I've made mistakes in the past where I chose like cool technology I didn't really have a good grip on, even if it was an interesting project, and then I didn't even really care too much about the project material and stuff like that. So like this really was just a coming together of a lot of different spaces and interests, and the tech really met with the human side, and the team was great, and so that's why it's worked out to this point.
Very cool. Well, definitely give us those resources and we will link both of those up. Ben, one thing that you can do now, which you couldn't do previously, which I've found to be very fun, is when you are describing something that you're doing in software, or you are doing a talk, or you're trying to get somebody to add a feature, whatever it is, you can actually link to the line of code or the file on GitHub and say, this is exactly what I'm talking about. And you no longer have to talk in the abstract about your software. Now that it's open source, you can actually just send them the source, and it's super cool.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and it's much easier to just do certain kinds of support in general when like you always have that at your disposal, even if you're not talking to the person who might need it all the time. Mm-hmm. But like the fact that like so many things can just be described that way, like just like this is exactly what the problem is, and with the project, we expect, there'll be flies on the wall who might, like, anytime we describe something, they might fix it. But even just being able to talk about it is, of course, like, half the battle. And we already have some folks who just go around refactoring, like all the time in the little project, because we invited some folks in early on, like, in addition to the, like, kind of explicit auditing, just to, like, kind of start working on stuff. And it's just been so cool. And what we really have to get a little bit better at now is like, describing like the path and the vision and stuff, because that really is not a strength of mine. To sort of, now I have to kind of have a different role where I actually am trying to like describe what we're supposed to be painting a lot more.
Yes.
And that's going to be a challenge, one that I think I'm up for. And mostly I just need to take a liking to it more so than like any new skill or anything, because it's a little bit, it sometimes feels like time away from the code, and but I think I like to have fun with it. I really love hanging around the website itself. Like I spend so much time on dev.to, and it's just the more like we can make like the future of dev.to like jive with like how we like to use dev.to ourselves, and like this whole meta concept of like working on the thing that you're like hanging out on the thing you're working on. It's all really fun, and I just can't say enough about how exciting some of these new things we're doing are. And I don't really have any sort of strong open source ties in my life. I've contributed a little bit. I've been a big fan of open source for a long time, but like never, had the urge to like strongly become a part of any one project, because it's just not like really in my personality the same way I see it with so many community members. And I'm just like really excited to see it all happen and to be able to do it full time. Like I'm not very good at splitting my time in that sense, and the yeah, it's just exciting things lay ahead.
I'd say now that we got the understanding of why open sourcing matters to you, to your team, to the business, to the direction, that makes sense. But what about the community itself? Like, what are you hoping for, like, the community to contribute back? Like, part of the reason why you open source is not just to, hey, here's my code, take a peek. It's more like maybe there's some reasons for, the community to get involved. Or what are some of your vision or aspirations there?
Yeah, so we really think of it as like, not really one killer reason it has to happen. Lots of people have just been really excited to kind of like build the things they've been complaining that are missing, and little things like that, which is one part of the puzzle. But I've really been driven by certain successful open source projects, like namely Linux, which I think just really has a fascinating idea of how to develop software where people can contribute in sort of greedy ways, where potential partnerships or platform sort of concepts, people can really, like, if they want something to happen and we agree that it should happen in theory, we just don't have the resources for it, they can kind of help code it up. So like we have partnerships, with our current sustaining business model is a few different things, including we have some sponsors and some partners. Like we run some community contests and things like that. And all of these things sometimes just need like that extra special bit of effort to really make happen. But like, our core vision doesn't really work with that. Like we can't just take our minds and put them towards like building all the little features that a contest needs. But we find these people we work with have a lot of sort of willing contributors who, their job is to kind of make this work. So like, how can I make this work? By like finding folks within my team to kind of work with your team, like on the code to make it happen. And that's just super duper exciting. And then the big kind of like, magical unicorn use case is people will develop ways for this application to be sort of a little bit more generic and possibly stand up their own communities. Not necessarily in tech, but maybe like, we don't really feel like there's just room for one, but also, dev.to for music, for activism, for just like news and media and stuff like that. Like we kind of have a sort of path that's kind of like a media organization kind of story, and we eventually settled on this platform. And I think like, our app right now is a pretty simple Rails app we've hacked together as best we can, but there's a lot of like use cases that we can build on this, and the community really actually can make this better. So what we hope is that, today this is the dev.to code base. You can't really like actually use it as a different app, but we want to support that use case in the long run. And we hope that there's a number of contributors who really contribute to that goal, because that's the place where it's not for us, it's for kind of the world. It's for like,
right. You're not helping the people build features for dev.to itself, but maybe take what dev.to's platform is to maybe greater heights outside of dev.to potentially.
Yeah, and like the features, like to make these things work, it's like if one other group of people, like anyone who's part of our platform, wants to build, dev.to for their activist cause or music or anything else that interests them in their lives, they immediately then have to, start caring about the quality of everything, working with us on missing features, like, arguing about whether something should exist or not in the concept of the code base. And that's really cool. And there are like, I've seen out there's a lot of like these kind of like community, these sort of make your own social network platforms. But none of them are meaningfully open sourced, or if they are open sourced, they're missing the whole sort of caretaking I think we've done with this whole project in terms of molding the user experience and the code and stuff like that. So like when I look out there, I see a void in the universe a little bit, but I think our goal will to be to run the dev community. Like we are a dev platform for developers, but if there's future instances we will be super supportive of that, because that makes this whole thing an ecosystem. And we're not going to build like necessarily an abstract framework. We don't want this to be like a spin your own whatchamacallit, like a WordPress or anything like that. But it's, all these things are really good guideposts for how to make like software that's much bigger than yourself and much bigger than the initial problem, and just more amazing. And if we could take on the Facebooks and the Twitter of the world with a number of individual sort of decentralized but compatible social networks, so be it. It's kind of grandiose, and that's why we don't really like worry too much about that, but it's a use case we really want to support. And the thing about open source is it's magical. Like Linux really bit a huge chunk out of what Microsoft wanted to be, and Microsoft, in order to survive, had to completely adopt and become sort of the biggest proponents in the world of open source. So
it's true.
Yeah, I'm like a practical idealist. Like, I don't want us to be in the business of like toppling Facebook, but if a side use case is that like somebody's trying, we'll say, go get it. We'll support this as much as we can, as long as it also helps the dev community. So that's all. It's all just like cool stuff. It's the magic of like networks and people and all these things that like my team is interested in, I'm interested in. Like, it's just fascinating. But ultimately, like, it happens by people fixing bugs and coming up with new ideas and like refactoring some code here and there. It's just a process, and it's hopefully boring, and we don't need to like innovate at every angle. We just need to be very craftsman-like and do a good job with our work. And who knows like how big something can be when you really put in those sort of caring moments.
Well, let me be the first to say it, if not the second, at least on the show. Congrats on this launch. It's obviously a big deal. I think we said it first off, but I mean, I'm excited about it, that it's open source. And you promised it a long time ago. Finally, it's here. You've put a lot of thoughtfulness into not only the user experience of dev.to, but also the fact that it's open source, and just stoked for you guys. And I know Jess was supposed to be on this call. We're bummed she couldn't make it, but make sure you say hi to her for us and let her know we missed her.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been awesome hanging out with you two, and I hope to run into you again. We met at OSCON 2 years ago.
2 years ago, yeah.
And yeah, a lot has happened since then, and I think Changelog has been really humming along, and we want to like work with you as much as possible if there's anything we can do. I think now that we're open source, those kind of chats can happen a little bit more smoothly. Like it's all just a benefit. Like we want to. Yeah, absolutely. There's so many great open source projects, and we already feel like it's a few hours into our adventure, but we're so much more steeped in the whole community, in the whole sort of software world, and it's it's so exciting.
Well, cool. Ben, thank you so much for your time today. Congrats on open sourcing, and thanks more importantly, for coming on the show and sharing your story, man. It's a lot of fun going through that. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Changelog. If you enjoyed this show, do me a favor. Go on Twitter, tweet about it, go to iTunes, leave us a rating, at least go and star it. That helps everybody out there wanting to hear the show to discover it. And of course, thank you to our sponsors, Hired, Linode, and GoCD. Also, thanks to Fastly, our bandwidth partner. Head to fastly.com to learn more. And we catch our errors before our users do here at Changelog because of Rollbar. Check them out at rollbar.com/changelog. We're hosted on Linode cloud servers. Head to linode.com/changelog. Check them out. Support this show. Hosting the show today is myself, Adam Stacoviak, and Jared Santo. Music is by Breakmaster Cylinder. You can find more shows just like this at changelog.com. We got lots of shows for you to check out. If you are missing out on podcasts or looking for more developer podcasts, go to changelog.com/podcasts. Subscribe to our master feed to get them all. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. If you enjoyed the interlude earlier in the show when we had that disconnect with Ben, when he had to take care of that hacking session to fix that issue, and you like that song from BMC, here's the full track.
Murder, 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 murder.